Welcome to the Beyond Jiu Jitsu podcast, episode number 25. This episode, as you can probably tell by the title, is all about drilling. Does it actually improve your jiu jitsu, or is it a big old waste of time?
Yeah, there's, first thing, hello, Kieren, what's up?
What's up, Adam?
Not much, bro, not much.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. How are you feeling?
Not the best. Not the best.
Maybe let's
Story time.
bit of bet. Wait, spin a dit.
I'm going to say, look at you go.
All right. First officer, Adam over here.
Yep.
We need the Tweety birds on this.
Yeah. So basically what Adam is alluding to is I am injured. Yesterday we did some park rolling, did some rolling sessions in the park. Now that in Sydney, restrictions have eased for fully vaccinated people. They can gather in groups of 5 for exercise and picnics and all sorts of shit. So we put some mats down in the park, and not the first time we had done it during this easing period of restrictions. Anyway, I was rolling. I was in Cuba, a blue belt, in his close guard in no gi. I went for the
mainly because rolling in the park in gis would
look really weird when we're a bit self-conscious. We don't want to look a bit.
So we just went full nude.
Yeah, yep. And Ads doesn't wear underwear, as we've established. So anyway, I was in close guard. I went for the close guard escape, C grips into the armpits, stand up, and then I've actually got this on film. So by the time this releases, it's well and truly on YouTube. So if you are a subscriber to my YouTube channel, you would already know this. But what happened is, and I got it in slow-mo as well, in 4K.
Yeah.
What happened is I reviewed the footage, and my right foot, as I went to step back to push down on the knee, the leg in the standard escape, it slipped on the mat, and then I landed on an awkward sort of twisting angle on my left knee. I don't know the full extent of the damage yet, but you guys probably do, particularly if you've seen it on my YouTube, because I'm no doubt going to be releasing it there. But I'm a bit concerned about potential meniscus and etc. So I got an MRI, but yeah, fucked up my knee.
Did you get an MRI?
No, I got an MRI scheduled.
Yeah, sweet. When's that?
So it's probably going to be next week. I got to confirm.
In the words of my son Atlas, you've got a boo-boo.
Yeah, I've got a boo-boo. A bit concerned, but
good news for you, Kieren, because last week we recorded an episode called "How to Deal with BJJ Injuries."
Yeah, go fuck yourself.
That should be due to release in the coming weeks. You can have a listen to that, and on your way.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. I mean, I was there when it happened. I didn't actually see it, but you
heard my fucking swearing.
Definitely heard you swearing and crying, and
I blew up.
Yeah, I mean,
I think I was more scared than anything about the knee.
Yeah, I was quite. I mean, because I didn't see it, I didn't have any initial reaction. But it's quite a odd position to severely injure yourself. You know, falling back down onto your knees from standing close guard.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not like, you've got it on footage. It's not like Kuba opened his guard and tried to go for a sweep and landed on your knee or anything.
Nothing he did caused me to slip.
I think the only thing that could compound the injury / pain is that it was just on some mats in the park.
Yeah,
so they're not
hard ground.
Yeah, not as padded as you used to in the gym. So
yeah, for sure.
I mean, I've hurt my knee from just shooting a single or double leg too hard and just smashing my knee into the mat. And I mean, I've got knee issues, but the point I'm trying to make is you could hurt your knee on soft mats. So then when you're on really hard, essentially quite hard mats in the park, and Kuba's 80 kilos, some 85, something
I reckon he's very similar to my weight. We're very similar.
So, when you're picking that person up and then you slam back down onto your knees, like my initial thought was that you had maybe popped a bursa. For those who don't know, a bursa, I don't know the exact details, but a bursa is kind of like this fluid cushioning sac thing in your knee. I've popped one before, and your knee instantly like swells to the size of a.
That's similar to what happened, but
grapefruit. It goes
okay,
massive. Like if you pop a bursa,
you know about it.
Oh, like your knee goes instantly huge.
Okay.
So at first I thought like, oh, maybe you've like popped a bursa or something, which is not that severe of an injury. It's just dealing with swelling.
What's your prediction? What do you reckon?
Yeah, I don't know, bro. Like, I mean, I'm hoping it's just like quite severe bone bruising.
Yeah, I hope it's just bruising. Yeah.
You know, you said that you're concerned that it might be meniscus. I mean, I've had 2 meniscus surgeries on the lateral, the outside of my knee, which is where you're feeling the pain,
same
and the
place.
way that you were describing kind of feeling some pain going up into your quad and stuff. I never felt that with the meniscus. If anything, it was more sort of more localized to the knee connecting to the calf opposed to the quad,
okay.
you know, but yeah, I don't know. Like I'm hopeful it's just really just a severe bone bruise because it was such a standard position to kind of impact your knee. But then again, you know, you could break an ankle by stepping off a curb wrong.
Yeah,
you know? Like you can hurt yourself any which way. But I mean, like I said, how to deal with injuries. Recorded that episode last week.
Just need to go watch that.
Yeah, you'll be good to go, bro. But yeah, I mean it's unfortunate timing if it does turn out to be something a little worse. Where here in Sydney at the moment we're looking like if nothing change. Well, I mean we'll be out of this initial lockdown by the time this episode releases, but at the time of recording we're 12 days away from this like restrictions more or less lifting for people who are double vaccinated here in New South Wales.
It's got me so bummed now.
But you know, man, to put your mind at ease, like I would. Have you already booked in the MRI?
No, I had to get a referral first, so I've got the referral to do it, and I've just got to book into an imaging center.
You call today, bro. If you can get in ASAP, because it already like even then. Once you get the MRI, you're still looking at a few days to get the results back. And it's just peace of mind, right? I've had multiple MRIs, right? Because even outside of my surgeries, I then became quite not self-conscious, but I became really cautious about anything that happened with my knees. And they'll always find something, you know, like they could do an MRI on your other knee and they'll tell you you've got a partial tear in something. Like, I mean, they'll find something. There's always inflammation or whatever. And so, you know, I wouldn't stress too much about it, but it's just good peace of mind.
Yeah,
right?
100%. But if you want to check out how I fucked up my knee, it's on YouTube. high definition, 4K, slow-mo footage.
Yeah, worth a watch. But anyone who's a bit squeamish, it's not. You're not seeing anything like snap in half. Like it's not like that.
It's just me falling on my knee and like swearing for 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's like whenever I see like something on Reddit, that'll be. It's like the subreddit had to hurt, and then it'll say something like, "Oh, look at the way his leg bends." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not clicking on that, bro. I can't."
Oh, did you see the video of the guy in a competition? This was a little while ago, earlier this year, where he was in a Kimura, but his arm bone snapped in half.
Oh my God, I did not, and I will.
Oh man, it was hectic. It went viral on the BJJ subreddit, and dude, like the guy in his own words, the reason he didn't tap is because he didn't feel any pressure on his shoulder. His shoulder was fine because, you know, Kimura being a shoulder lock, he's like, I'm fine, I can sit here. But there was so much pressure that his fucking bone snapped.
Yeah, you know, it can happen, right? What belt was I? I was either blue or purple belt, and I'm just replaying it in my mind. Yeah, I was a blue or purple belt, and I got submitted with a footlock. In a competition, just like a straight footlock. But as most people know, you tend to sort of turn towards belly down, straight footlocks. And it wasn't on my foot at all, but I swear to God, like I thought my shin was going to break in half. And I was looking down at my leg and I could just see my shin just bowing.
Oh,
and I was like, and like, don't get me wrong, it hurt as well, but it wasn't like, I think, you know, if I look back at it, if my eyes were closed, I probably wouldn't have tapped. Don't get me wrong, it really, like it was super painful, but it was more like I visually saw like my shin turning into a bow, like a bow and arrow. Like it was just bending the right call, man. So much. And I was like, he's going to break my shin in half. And like, I was like, nah, like, you know, and yeah, still super hurt. I'm not saying that that he didn't legit have me in a submission, but it was just that visual prompt of like, yeah, whatever works, right?
Yeah, yeah, boy.
But yeah, it was something like we've spoken a lot that you could learn to tap sooner.
Yeah, I definitely can. But I can also learn to do more drilling.
Drilling, bro. I've heard it's good.
Yeah, drillers are killers, right? I've heard that
killers, one. Drill to kill. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, probably. I mean, in the more recent, not recent, it's pretty ancient now, but a while back, one of the earlier names in jiu-jitsu in Australia is Kit Dale, right? A lot of people know who Kit Dale is, and he copped heaps of flack because he went on to say that drilling's a waste of time and all this. And look, I don't know Kit personally, and he's not someone I really follow. I don't really follow him on what his day-to-day, what he does and everything. But I believe as it went on, he ended up kind of backpedaling and then advocating for drilling. So I don't know the full story. I know now he has heaps of instructionals and stuff, but I guess what I'm trying to say is in Australia, Kit Dale was someone who came out to say quite publicly that drilling was like a waste of time and things like that. And yeah, he copped heaps of shit for it because anyone who's trained knows that most people drill and lots of people drill, and there's a lot to be gained from drilling, right? And I think you would even agree in your short time of training, right?
No, I completely disagree. Like I definitely think that, man, I think drilling is really important, obviously. Like I don't understand how you would learn how to do the movements without drilling them. Like particularly in the beginner stage, like I'm still a white belt, as everyone knows. So by this stage, I say it like every episode. But I mean, yeah, I think without drilling, I don't know how I could feasibly learn the movements. It's repetition. Jiu-jitsu is so nuanced. It's so like, I'm not gonna say delicate, but certain techniques can be pretty complicated. Like, they put their hand here, you need to react this way. And in the heat of the moment, in a roll, in a competition, you need to do it instantly. You need muscle memory, right? So I think that the foundation of that muscle memory is created during drilling, and then the timing of that muscle memory is perfected during rolling.
Yeah. I'll just point out for the one listener we might have who doesn't train jiu-jitsu, my mum. My mum, thanks mum. Mum listens to all my episodes.
Mine doesn't.
Drilling is we're referring to just practicing the techniques, right? Like going over them. And, there's different types of drilling, and even inside a class, there's different ways that you drill the technique, and that's going to be dictated by your instructor, right? What I mean by that is, let's say your instructor teaches the technique and they might say, okay, guys, do 10 each, or they might show the technique and they'll go, okay, guys, 3 minutes on the clock, 1 for 1, take it in turns, or they might go 3 minutes each, whatever it is. Okay. And even then, like some instructors do far longer, like rounds of drilling. Yep. For me, you would know, right? I typically put 3 minutes each on the clock for the student to drill the technique. But yeah, I've trained at some gyms where they'll put like 5 or 8 minutes. And then on top of that, some gyms teach, like the same technique for the week or even the month. Like,
yeah, I've seen that. Yeah,
I've never trained at gyms like that. I don't enjoy training that way.
Yeah.
For some people, it might work. I find it super tedious and just too much repetition. And there's other reasons why I could go into why it's, I believe, the wrong way to teach. But
let's go into it.
Well, I mean, it's just, okay, so we're kind of trying to cover two things here. One, on the one hand, it's super, super important to drill because you need a lot of repetition. Okay, like the famous quote from Bruce Lee in a nutshell is, what is it? Like, I don't fear the man who trains 1,000 kicks. I fear the man who trains one kick 1,000 times.
Yeah, 100%.
Or whatever. So yeah, there does need to be a lot of repetition, which is why at its core, drilling is important, right? However, from a teaching point of view, when you teach the same thing or even theme, some gyms will teach a theme for a month. Like, they'll do mount for a month or a week or whatever it is. The issue with that is, well, one, jiu-jitsu is just so diverse and dynamic, right? Like you could teach a different technique every day and like you'd still never cover all the techniques in jiu-jitsu in a lifetime, right? But the student, it's kind of like the argument that instructors tend to make is they don't want students to miss out on whatever technique they're teaching, so that student who didn't train or doesn't train on a Monday or whatever doesn't miss out when they turn up on a Tuesday.
Right.
Which that logic is flawed because then you're structuring your whole class around rewarding students who don't train, opposed to rewarding the students who do and turn up more consistently, right? So if you're there, if you train 5 days a week, and every day, every class, you're doing the same technique and sequence, that might be fine if it's one of your favorite techniques that you wanted to drill anyway. But what if I said to you, like, let's say, for example, okay, what's a technique I'm not really a fan of? Oh, let's say like
Spider guard.
A spider guard or something, right? Whatever. I'm like, oh man, I hate spider guard. I don't like playing spider guard.
Have you tried tarantula guard?
Tarantula guard, yep. Trapdoor spider guard,
Yeah.
yep. What's that spider? Andrew's cross, isn't that a spider?
Yeah.
Andrew's cross guard, yep. What if I don't like spider guard and then we're doing spider guard for the month? And I'm like, well, F this month of training or,
You're just going to check out during the drilling.
Or maybe not turn up.
Yeah.
Right.
And particularly if you're at a gym that does that and also puts 8 minutes on the clock and, and drills for like 45 minutes. Fuck me.
Yeah. Well, one of my students was recently, elsewhere, not recently, a while back before lockdown, was elsewhere in Australia for work, right? For 6 weeks or something like that. So he was training at a different gym while he was there. And when he came back, I was like, dude, show me because the gym he was at is a really good, credible gym with a really high level instructor and competitor. I was like, dude, what'd you learn? Like, show me the cool stuff. And it was just this one, like 3 or 4 move sequence. And that's all they did for like the whole 4-6 weeks. Like that's it. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And don't get me wrong. There's lots of little details and nuances but like, man, like for me personally, I would get super bored.
Yeah, me too.
Like I would, one of the things that attracts me the most to jiu-jitsu is how diverse it is and how every day can be something different and new. And yeah, so it's just the wrong way to teach, in my opinion. Like, yes, there needs to be a lot of time spent on repetition and things like that.
But I think you could do that with spaced repetition because there's something like I nerded out a little while ago in terms of learning how to learn. And there's a concept that everyone would be familiar with, spaced repetition. As in you learn a concept and then, X amount of days later, you go over it again and then X amount of weeks later and then X amount of months. And that's how you convert something into long-term memory storage. Yep. You need spaced repetition. If you chose mount escapes or something or mount or whatever, a theme for a month, and then you didn't cover that again until the following year, that space, there's no space repetition there. You're cramming. And then
it's so
next
funny.
month you're going to lose it.
We were just talking about something similar before we started recording, completely different subject, but we were talking about, you had to learn some anatomy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, like ask yourself, anyone who's, maybe doubting what Kieren just said, ask yourself this, like, was there a subject in school or uni that you sucked at and you crammed for a week and got like super knowledgeable on whatever subject and you passed your test? And can you remember that shit now?
No.
Bet you can't. It's gone, right?
Yeah.
So I just really think it's the wrong way.
Yeah, agreed. And if people are bored, they're not going to retain anything. If you're bored, you don't learn.
Yeah.
Like straight up, you just don't.
Like I said, it's fine. It's fine if it's that current technique you're frothing on. But I mean, we spoke about in hang on, let me bring up what episode it was.
What was the episode about?
About how to enjoy, episode 19, how to enjoy the grind, and why you shouldn't join the Navy. And one of the things that I spoke about was, how I like to find the technique or position that I'm having fun with, and I play with that for however long. Yeah. So I mean, if I'm going through a phase of just frothing on worm guard, yeah, sure, I'd probably be happy to drill it every day for a month or whatever.
Yeah.
But the chance that 100% of your students are all going to be frothing on the same technique at the same time and want to, man, it's just, yeah.
And that's the difference between thinking like a competitor and thinking like a coach. They're different mentalities.
Yeah, super different. Fabio said to me years ago how difficult he found it to be a coach and a competitor at the same time.
They're opposite mentalities.
Yeah, because, you know, to be a high-level successful competitor, you have to, at the end of the day, be rather selfish, right? Because it's your training and it's your drilling and your jiu-jitsu that has to be a priority over everyone else's.
And on the flip side of that, to be a good coach, you need to be absolutely selfless and think nothing about yourself, more so your students and who you're instructing.
Yeah, it should be the opposite, right?
Exactly.
Like, I mean, it's
a dichotomy, isn't it? They're completely opposite.
A very basic example would be often, you know, for me personally, I teach 99% of the classes at the gym. So obviously when I train, it's also during a class. And there's times when just the numbers or the groups or whatever, or the partners, they just don't match up correctly. So I don't get to train, right? And I'm not saying like, oh, poor me. I'm like, well, I'm not there for me to train. I mean, if I can train, awesome. However, it's the student's class, not mine. So if the choice is for me to miss out on training or that student to have to miss out on training so I can roll, I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? I miss out.
No-brainer.
I'm the teacher. Like, you know, I mean, you know, usually there's ways you can structure it with groups of 3 or whatever, or if the class is long enough, you have rest rounds so people are happy to rest one, roll one, you know, but the point I'm trying to make is that it's the student's class, right?
Just going back to, does drilling improve your jiu-jitsu? What do you think about drilling versus specific training? So if you had to choose one, I know in a perfect world, you don't choose one, you do both, right? But I've heard that there's an argument, and I don't want to misquote or butcher it, so I'm not going to name who I was talking to about this, but basically the concept is that if you had to choose one, specific training is the way to go, meaning you put yourself into, like, you essentially drill bad positions, but with a more rolling concept. So for those that don't know, I'm pretty sure everyone listening would know what specific training is, but effectively the concept is you start in a bad position, you roll.
Not necessarily a bad position.
Or you start in
a specified position.
Yeah, you start in a specified position, hence specific. You roll until that position has resolved or what have you. So for example, you could start in bottom mount, and the roll will reset if you escape or if your opponent submits you. Yep. So that's the concept. And the basically the discussion was that specific training out of bad positions can be more effective than just drilling a technique.
Yeah, you know, I think I've never been asked if you had to do one or the other. I mean, I kind of that question doesn't even come into my mind. I think you have to.
It's a little bit redundant.
I mean, you have to do both. But I know people, and I know high-level people who think that specific training is a waste of time. And I feel,
really?
I feel like I'm trying to talk to, you know, someone who, you know, whenever you're in those, I don't want to bag any particular, you know, topics or cultures or something, but you know how sometimes you talk to some people about whatever subject it is and you just can't reason with them, right? And they're just so illogically incorrect, and you just can't even talk, you just walk away, right?
Yeah. They're not open for an actual conversation. They just want an argument that no matter what you say, they'll just die on the hill.
And so I know some people who think like that about specific training, and it just boggles my mind. Specific training is one of the best ways to improve. And the reason is simple, right? Because let's say you're training with someone who is there's a big skill difference between you, right? So let's say you and I are rolling. So you got a white belt.
Wait, you said a big skill difference though.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, wait, sorry. Let's say you've got someone with a gigantic skill difference.
Right.
You and me are rolling.
Oh.
And no, but you've got like whatever it is. You got a white belt and a black belt, or, you know, or it could even be a black belt and a black belt, but they're just, you know, one's a 10-time world champion and another's just a dude, whatever.
Just a lad.
Just a lad. And so let's say you and I are rolling, right?
Mhm.
And we're just having a regular roll. Out of 100 rolls, you know, without taking jokes and the piss or whatever, just, you know, honestly, if you and I had 100 rolls, of how many of those rolls do you think you would mount me?
Legitimately?
Yeah.
Less than one.
Yeah, right?
It,
if you
it
and
may
I were
happen.
yeah, I mean, it could, but if you and I were having just proper rolls without like messing around and trying, like it just, there's just still at the moment too big of a skill gap.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not bagging.
If you were trying, I don't think out of 100, it would be less. It would be like 0.1.
Yeah. So, but yet if we do specific training and we're doing mount, I mean, that gives you an opportunity to
work on mount.
To work on mount against a black belt, right? Like someone that in a role, you'll never, so, you know, if you never did specific training, the only time that you would get to experience what it feels like to mount someone is when you're training with someone your level or less than you,
then
right?
when you're in that position, you're not experiencing how a high level competitor
escapes.
Yeah, got you. So you can't practice retaining mount against someone that's vastly better than you.
Yes. So
Perfect
that's
sense.
the first reason. And that's also like, I mean, that could be when you're two people who are similar level, right? So, you know, if I'm training with another black belt or brown belt, or even they could be a blue belt, whatever, you're training with some monster dude, could be a white belt, right? You're just
training with me,
I'm training with you now,
some monster
right?
lad.
Yes. And, you know, maybe it's someone who like out of 100 rolls would be lucky for either of us to take each other's back or something, you know. So then you do specific and you get to start in that position. So firstly, you're getting to experience a position that never organically happens, right? Which, sorry, I don't mean it never organically happens in jiu-jitsu, meaning, well, why would you practice it? I just mean against this partner, it might never happen.
Yeah.
But the other reason that makes specific training so important is because let's say for usually when we do it in the gym, we do 3 minutes each. So if it's mount, 3 minutes on top, 3 minutes on bottom, like you said, once the position's resolved usually meaning there's been a submission or you've escaped mount or whatever.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm mount on the bottom with you, like it's specific training. You should really be embracing that it's you can be doing specific training competitively, but it's not a competition. And what I mean by that is it's my opportunity to try a million different escapes. So let's say I try one particular mount escape and, you know, you choke me. Oh, shit, that didn't work. Like I'm instantly back in that position. I go, try this one. Oh, I got armbarred. You know, I'm being able to try, let's say within that 3 minutes, I might get 10 opportunities to escape mount. Whereas in an organic roll, that mount might only come up once every 100 rolls. And then when I'm in that mount, I might only get 1 or 2 chances to escape it, you know? So it's like you're just, you know what it makes me think of for anyone who's a bit of a Dragon Ball Z fan or ever watched Dragon Ball Z? Did you ever watch Dragon Ball Z?
I'm with you.
You know, I was never a huge fan, so I don't know all the names and stuff, but I remember that like Goku would go into that like room that for him time moved normally, but
and everything was heavy and shit.
Yeah, and like, you know, for him something like you know, 2 decades would pass, and when he would come out of the room, like in the real world, only like a day passed.
It's like some Inception level shit.
Yeah. So
or like Interstellar.
Yeah. So it's kind of like that specific training. You're getting to like really cram in a huge amount of training within that one position.
I was talking to
like, let's, you know, like what if you're like a boss at bearing bolos, but then you lose the back every time you get the back? Like, well, how are you going to improve your back control? Like, man, just do specific training with back control.
Particularly when you're saying like that position may not come up in an entire, you know, class of rolling.
Yeah.
It may not. But if you do specific training, you're forcing yourself in that position, getting more time, more experience. I was talking to Jeremy Skinner, and he was saying that the conversation came around because I was asking how like blue belts can submit black belts. And he was basically saying, okay, so you may be a blue belt, but if you did a shitload of specific training for leg locks or insert specific position here, in that position, you're not really a blue belt. You're the skill of a black belt. And if you can just focus on getting your opponent to the position where you have the more experience than them, then you'll win. And the way you achieve that is through specific training.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've said that a lot. That and I always use usually GSP as an example. You know, one of the best MMA fighters of all time was just so good at controlling. He would have the fight wherever he wanted. And the example in Jiu Jitsu I always give is, you know, someone who I've trained with a lot, you know, Levi, who's just incredible. Not only is he...
Who's Levi for the audience?
For the weird people listening who don't know who Levi is, Levi Jones-Leary, like pretty much the best Australian guy in the gi at the moment. COVID kind of derailed his world domination plans, but he'll be back. Anyway, he's probably one of the best bearing bolo guys in the world, but it's almost like what he's better at than bearing bolos is making sure that the fight is always connected to a position where he can do a bolo from, you know? So even if he was, a quote unquote blue belt, right? In that position, he's not even a black belt, bro. He's like beyond a black belt in the bearing bolo and keeping the fight in the bearing bolo position. Right?
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I'll give you an example. When we were, what were we, like purple, brown belts, you know, when I just roll with Levi, it's more or less a lot of that, like getting boloed, right? But I've done specific training with him in mount, and I would escape mount every time, and I would submit him every time when I had mount. There's a big weight and size difference between Levi and I, you know, lightweight against heavyweight. But that's, I mean, it's specific training. It doesn't matter, you know, and for all I know, Levi and I never sat down and had a conversation about it. For all I know, he was trying new escapes, you know, so even then it wasn't like, it's not a real simulation of a role, but it's such a powerful tool to develop your skills within that position, right? So, I mean, specific training is different to drilling, but you have to do it. Oh man, like people who think specific training is a waste, I mean, almost all sports do some type of specific training.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, like you could even look at weightlifting, right? Like, I mean, the argument that people have against specific training is like, you know, that like, oh no, it's just better to spend time like doing the actual thing. It's like, well, okay.
Yeah, I disagree.
If you're an Olympic lifter, right? So doing clean and jerks and snatch, are they the only two exercises you do? No, you do deadlifts, you do squats. You could think of those as like specific training that help the final movement that you're looking to do.
Analogy, Adam. So you're saying,
bam, take it.
Damn, take that analogy to the face. So you're saying that in terms of an analogy, that specific training is like accessory lifts to a power lifter or an Olympic lifter.
Yeah, you could say that.
I 100% agree. So then what is drilling?
All right, back to drilling. So drilling more just practicing your techniques, right? But how do you go about drilling? Who should drill? What should you drill? I think let's start with at the lower level, because I know
like how to do it.
No, sorry. What I mean is I know brand new, not even one stripe white belts yet who want to drill. Okay. Drilling is, when I think of drilling, what I think is someone who has found time outside of a regular class schedule to practice their techniques. And if you're someone who just wants to do jiu-jitsu as a hobby and drilling doesn't interest you, that's fine. But, you know, you're only going to achieve so much. You're only going to progress so much. The analogy I always give, and this resonates a lot with some people, because I know a lot of people, particularly some students who have a bit more of a academic approach or an academic thought mentality.
Like analytical?
Yeah, they kind of think that it should all be happening within the class. And I always give this analogy, this example. I say, well, imagine you were at uni to be a doctor, and the only time you ever did anything to do with medicine was when you were physically there in class. Do you reckon you'd pass and become a doctor? Probably not, right? Like, you know, there's hours of study and extracurricular activities you have to do. And, you know, one med student might be struggling to learn muscle names, so they're going to go study that. And one student might be forgetting to learn, you know, what drugs do what or whatever. And they're going to drill what is appropriate for them. So if you really want to improve, I'm not even talking about a professional athlete. I just mean like get better.
Yeah.
like anything you're interested in, even if it is just a hobby, then there has to be some investment outside of just the physical class. And I think, man, it really goes for anything. Like if I think back when, what's something I previously did that I would take classes for? Oh, like when I was younger, and
didn't you used to do opera singing?
I did opera singing. I was a beautiful tenor.
Yeah. And ballet, I believe.
I did a bit of ballet. We're actually going to have a guest on in the future who Jiu Jitsu black belt, ex ballerina.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. You can speak Spanish as well, right?
Yeah, I can speak Spanish. I can do it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Guitar. I took guitar lessons when I was younger, when I was a kid. But I then picked up the guitar when I was at home, not physically in the class. Like any hobby you have.
You need practice. Yeah.
I understand that logistically jiu-jitsu is a bit more difficult to do that because you need a partner.
You need a partner, you need mats, you need some space. But like back to your whole thing, like before, you know people before they've even got a one stripe that want to drill. I was drilling with Zach before I got a stripe.
So what should you drill? Okay. So if you're super new, okay, there really needs to be some faith given to your instructor. There's just too much information out there that if you're, let's take the example that you're not even a one stripe white belt yet, or you're super brand new, but you still want to drill. You're frothing on jiu-jitsu, and you've got access to mats, and logistically you can drill. You got a partner. What should you drill? Man, just drill whatever you've been getting shown in class. It's not like that technique you learnt in class that then you did 3 minutes each. That's stored and done, and you never need to drill it again. No, right? So my advice would be just drill whatever you were learning.
And to piggyback off that, I recommend writing down some notes after class. So when you go to drill, you're like, oh fuck, where do I put my hand, or how do I do this again? You have notes.
Yeah.
Taken at the time. Notes. That's whenever I drill, I refer to my notes.
Yeah. So I would recommend just, when you're super new, you're not yet at a point where you can drill, by yourself, so to speak. I mean, like intellectually by yourself.
Yep.
So just drill whatever you've been getting taught. And even at a higher level, like when I was in Brazil, to give people a reference of the amount of drilling I would do, and my drilling, what I would do is nothing compared to the amount that some people drill nowadays. But I would train at 7 a.m, and that would be 3 or 4 techniques. And then I would do some strength work, and then I would drill it from 11 till 12. And then I would train again at 12, and that would be more new techniques. So I would often, if I didn't know what to drill, I would just drill whatever was in the class from the day before, because I would be getting anywhere from 5 to 10 new techniques taught to me every single day, right? Like a lot of information. I trained a lot, that's why, but I would just drill whatever technique I liked from that class or whatever one I struggled with. So just drill whatever you've been getting shown. It's still just more repetition.
Okay, what if you're not new? What if we're talking to like blue belts and above now?
So now that you've got a bit more under your belt, what should you drill? Okay. Oh yeah, I didn't even, such a good pun. What should you drill is whatever's applicable to you and what you're working on. Right. So that's obviously going to change, could change from day to day, week to week, depending on your opponents. Are you preparing for a competition? Have you done privates with your coach? So he's given you some tips of what to drill. But yeah, if you're training enough, you would know what is not working for you. So what I mean by that, let's say your guard's constantly been getting passed, and then maybe you've asked your coach or you've asked a training partner, oh man, what do you think I should do here? And they show you, oh, you could do these 1 or 2 techniques. There you go. Go drill those techniques, right? And then see, once you've drilled them and got a hang of them, is that going to translate to you being able to do them in a roll, right? So you're going to drill what's applicable to you, right? Once you're then past that, like what do I drill, right? For example, so now let's say you're a bit more experienced. You don't need to be a black belt. You could still be a blue belt, but now you're well and truly more experienced. You've been training a long time. What should you drill? Well, firstly, you can always be drilling the 2 previous things we mentioned. You could always just be drilling what you learnt in a class, right? or you could be drilling what's applicable to you and has happened in a role, or what things you're struggling with in a role. But then there's also a type of drilling that I think is really, really important as you progress through jiu-jitsu, and that's problem solving drilling. And this is a skill that allows you to start, for lack of a better word, like inventing jiu-jitsu techniques, if you will, because when you're always relying on someone else for the answer, it doesn't force you to find that answer by yourself, right? Again, I'll go with another analogy, but if you're just always an assistant manager on some engineering project or something, there's a difference between that and then when you're the head engineer.
The buck stops with you.
Yeah, right? And there's problems come up and you have to solve the issue, opposed to when you're just someone else, you might be able to ask your boss or that superior, right? And I spoke to Fabio about this because my jiu-jitsu, from a technical point of view, got way better once I left Brazil. Not because the training wasn't good there, but I just had so much access to people far more knowledgeable than me who could just answer my questions and, give me a million techniques to solve particular problems. But then when I moved back here, I didn't have access to that anymore, or at least not as much access. So I was forced to solve problems on my own. And I
think the difference there is that you have, like, your foundational knowledge is vastly superior to that of a blue belt or what have you, that you're able to delve into the archive of your jiu-jitsu knowledge and pick things from here, things from there, and then formulate a solution.
Exactly. You have to be at a certain level to already be able to do that. Yeah. You can't be someone who's I've learned how to measure the circumference of a circle. Bam, head engineer on a project, solving problems by myself, building bridges. No, right? Obviously, what allows you to do that is an accumulation of knowledge and skills and techniques. And I was speaking to Fabio about it, and he was like, 100%. He said that some of his students, the more notable students who ended up moving to the States, like Lucas Lepri, Marcelo Garcia, Cobrinha, he was like, man, they just exploded once they left his gym, because the same thing happened to them. They then weren't in the gym with Fabio every day, and they had to start, making stuff up by themselves. So you would even know this from drilling that you and I have done, where sometimes I'll just have you in a position or whatever, and I'm just kind of there with my eyes closed, like thinking, and, I'm just physically troubleshooting stuff, trying to find solutions for a particular thing that's happening in my game or my roles or a position because it still blows my mind how dynamic jiu-jitsu is, and that we haven't figured out everything that can be done with two different humans with 8 limbs, right? 4 each, right?
What humans are you drilling with, mate?
But you know what I mean? So that's like the next level of drilling, where you can problem solve stuff on your own. And it's a super important skill to develop as you progress through your jiu-jitsu. You need to be able to learn to solve problems on your own. You can't always be turning to a superior and getting the answer spoon-fed to you.
Okay,
I'm not saying don't ask your instructors for help, but I'm just saying if you're a student of engineering, your goal is to get to a point where you could be a lead engineer, right?
So I have a question for you then. If I'm a white belt and maybe someone in my gym, like maybe another white belt or a blue belt, is always smashing me with one technique, is problem solving for myself, is that looking online to find a solution to that and then drilling that with a partner and bringing that to the next class? I know that you shouldn't always specifically train things just to beat this one person or just to beat one technique that one person has. It's a bad habit to be in if you're obsessed with it. But say, for example, if you did that, does that count as solving your own problem?
I don't think that's a bad habit to have. I've spoken a lot about making goals against individual training partners. Looking online for that answer, I'm not going to go into the whole like watching YouTube and what have you, but no, that doesn't count as problem solving on your own. Like it's a as a lower belt, it's not a bad strategy.
Yeah, I've done it a bunch of times.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much content out there. I mean, my advice would be to ask your instructor, because they should be able to help you.
But I think like being proactive, and say for example, if I'm pretty new and I'm dealing with a pretty stock standard issue, like something that's super basic that I could find on any generic like white belt tips sort of YouTube video or channel, and I find the solution. I look to work it in, and then I ask the instructor questions about that technique. Is that a better approach?
Yeah, I mean, look, like that's fine, but yeah, it's not. I mean, it's in the beginnings of embracing that kind of trying to fix stuff by yourself. But yeah, it's not what you. I mean, you want to be getting to a point where you don't need to
outsource.
Yeah, like the information that you can sort through to come to a solution should just be all happening internally. Like internally is in like from your
wealth of knowledge, experience.
Exactly, opposed to looking elsewhere for it. That helps though. But yeah, the whole looking at YouTube for solutions as white belts, it can just get super messy, you know. Just if you should have a coach who you can ask them questions and they'll help you, or other training partners. I mean, yeah, I said this before. People just get so into looking for that, you know, golden egg solution, the golden goose that'll solve all their problems, right? They keep searching for that YouTube video that's just going to be that one magical technique that works 100% of the time, but the rest of the world has never found it yet. And this one dude's uploaded this video and you're going to be the world champion white belt. Like, man, no, there's no one magical technique. And students who go off and spend, you know, 8 hours a day watching YouTube techniques and then turn up to the gym once a week. And it's like, man, like, why are you paying this dude to train at the gym and learn from them? Like YouTube, like, man, just go ask your instructor. Like they should be able to help you, right?
In my early days, I would watch a lot of like how to do submission videos, because like it was probably just so happens that it was the period that I joined. We did a lot of positional stuff, a lot of escapes. You know, some of the submissions were a bit too complex for me at the time. So I just kind of wanted a repertoire of basic submissions. So I'm talking Americana, I'm talking Kimura, I'm talking like, you know, rear naked choke, cross collar choke, super basic, because I was getting frustrated because I didn't know what to do when I got to superior positions. Because, you know, even in the early days, particularly when I was rolling against another white belt, I was able to muscle my way into shit. And I'd get there and I'm like, oh, now what? Yeah. So I think I looked at, because I would never approach you and say, hey, Adam, can you give me 5 submissions like on the spot to work on? So I'd just go onto YouTube and type in submissions for white belts and boom, watch that shit. And then looking at super basic stuff that you ended up covering like over and over again in class anyway. And I think after I'd seen it online and then I'd seen you talk about the same points, I was like, fuck, that makes sense. Like paint their hand like a brush down the side and then like literally the same sort of stuff. And I'm like, okay, I've seen that before. And then after you showed me the technique in class, I was like, okay, I think I understand mechanics now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, because, you know, whatever position or submission you're doing can get incredibly complex. I would always joke that, you know, Fabio could probably still to this day make my hip escape better. You know, like it's just like such a level of detail. And, you know, that really goes back to why a huge amount of repetition is important. Because let's say an Americana, right? That first time you see it, you're probably going to just only retain a few little details, which is also why instructors shouldn't spend an hour to teach one technique. Like it's too much information. I did a seminar once with Cobrinha, and man, like it was great, but it was just like so much information. And I've always been quite I think a pretty good learner at learning jiu-jitsu techniques. When in Brazil, you know, whoever was teaching would show the technique, they'd show it once or twice and I was good to go off and drill it, you know. And then as I was drilling it, something might come up and I'll, you know, put my hand up and get help, like, oh, what's happening here or whatever it is. Whereas even when I was a white belt, blue belt. Like I was always like that. I only needed to see it once or twice. And I think that skill developed even further during my initial maybe 3 to 6 months in Brazil, where my Portuguese wasn't very good yet, where I just was forced to be quite visual in the way I would learn it. Whereas at the same time, there would be world champion black belts standing next to me who would ask to see it once or twice more before they would go off and drill it. So you can't retain all that information. So you might turn up to a class and it's that technique again, but then you're going to retain, a different bit.
Or you'll have a light bulb moment. I think for me, the biggest one has been the hip bump sweep. We've probably done it. I've probably done that maybe 3 or 4 times. And every single time we do it, because I've never been able to, well, I have now, but up until that point, I'd never been able to actually do it. I didn't know what I was doing wrong. And then every time I see it, I'm like, oh, okay, that's what I'm doing wrong. I need to fix that. And then I run into another problem. Okay, my leg's in the wrong position. I'm stopping myself from doing the sweep. So 100%. And then you have literally light bulb moments, and it's the best feeling.
Yeah, and really I think because you need to, and I think a nice way to, a thought to kind of tie all this in as to why drilling and specific training and everything is so important is because with the development and the evolution of anything, right? Jiu-jitsu, medicine, like whatever it is, things only progress because you can build on previous accomplishments or knowledge.
Standing on the shoulder of giants. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So you need to, on the one hand, you need to assume that there's already, like when someone tells you something, you need to assume that it's correct. What? Sorry, that came out wrong. But if you're learning from someone and they tell you, if you're learning from a math teacher and they tell you 2 + 2 = 7, right? Obviously it doesn't, but like you would have to just take their word for it, right?
Yeah.
Like you're learning from a teacher, okay?
Yeah.
So, but obviously you want a math teacher who knows what they're talking about. They tell you 2 + 2 = 4. You go, okay, and off you go. So you can build on that, right? And that's with everything. Everything progresses in this agreement, kind of almost in society, this agreement that there's some assumed knowledge, right? I mean, when I was told that looking at the sun can damage your eyes, I didn't feel compelled to test that theory. I just took that person's word for it, right? And I didn't go outside and stare at the sun.
Yeah.
Okay. But on the one hand, just what I'm saying is
trust your instructor.
Trust your instructor, and because they're giving you information and that is already been tried and proven. However, the thing that makes jiu-jitsu slightly different and then why you need to drill is because that theoretical knowledge then needs to become physical knowledge, right? So it's not like something like I've used engineering as an analogy a lot today, but it's not like something like engineering or mathematics where I can just tell you, Kieren, like because of X, Y axis, blah, 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 that would collapse. And you just go, okay, cool. Like don't do, it's that theory in jiu-jitsu then becomes physical knowledge. So let's say with the hip bump, maybe it's something like I'm telling you, bro, it won't work unless like you come up onto your hand. If that support hand, you stay on your elbow, like it won't work. You need to come up onto your hand, okay? And that's knowledge that I'm giving you that's been built on previous knowledge and everything. And you go, okay, yeah, cool. And you agree with me and everything. But then that needs to physically translate. So then maybe you're not hip bumping in your rolls and you look at some footage and you realize, man, I'm not coming up onto my hand like I thought I was. Like that, because it's not like just because you theoretically know something, your brain and your muscles just go, bam, cool, I can instantly do that.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
So that's why the drilling needs to happen. So you can convert that theoretical knowledge into physical knowledge, into muscle memory and all those sorts of things, right? So it can happen, so you can pull it off in a roll, so you can win those gold medals.
Right? So the way I would see it is
that could have been summarized much cleaner. So
you learn a technique from your instructor. You trust your instructor, but verify if required. The 2 + 2 = 7 analogy there. So you learn the technique, you trust it. You then drill the technique in your own time if you can to obviously learn that muscle memory. You can then utilize specific training for areas that you may not get into often to troubleshoot that drilling of the technique in a live, quote, rolling scenario. And then you put that all together and use it in your rolls.
Yep. Yep.
So it's like a progress, right? You learn, you drill, you specific train, and then you can apply it in your rolls and in competition.
It's our clickbait 4-step plan to jiu-jitsu success.
That's what the title will be.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's just without doing those things, jiu-jitsu is it's just too many what ifs, right? Like the exact same thing could play out with you, but then the exact same thing plays out with this other guy whose arm is slightly longer than yours.
Yeah.
So whatever thing happens and doesn't work, like there's just so many what ifs. Again, it just boggles my mind how dynamic, it can be with just two people grappling. Everyone moves different and has different bodies, and like it's just so dynamic. A million different things can happen just with the one basic technique or position. So yeah, learn the technique, drill it, specific training, put that in your roll, right? And then
you be a killer.
And then come back to the start.
I
guess it would be step 1, 2, 3, 4. And then back to step 2, right? If you're working the same technique.
Yeah.
So then it just is this 2, 3, 4 cycle.
Yep.
Right. So learn, drill, specific, roll, and then you would go back to drill, specific, roll, drill, specific, roll. If you're
with troubleshooting in there.
Yeah, if you're talking about the same technique.
Awesome.
But yeah, drill. Like it's super important. I wish I did more of it. I wish I had more time to drill. If you're someone who likes the knowledge side of jiu-jitsu as well, I really get off on the troubleshooting side of jiu-jitsu. I enjoy the fact that now I'm at a level that I can try to solve problems by myself. I find that super fun. So drill, find a drill partner, find time outside of regular class. I know logistically it can be hard.
Yeah.
But it really is what takes your jiu-jitsu to another level. Probably the most famous guys are the Meow brothers would drill so much. Man, Levi, again, spoke about Levi. He would, even when he had no one to drill with, he would drill by himself. Like he would do the jiu-jitsu.
On a dummy or something?
No, he would do the jiu-jitsu equivalent of shadow boxing. He would, and I've done this as well sometimes, and I can credit Levi for it because I had never done it prior to seeing him do it. But he would essentially have his eyes closed and be shadow drilling. He would be going through the motions as best as you can, because obviously some techniques
like visualization with muscle memory in there. That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
So
it'd be highly effective.
And you can't argue with it not working because look at him, right?
Exactly. And I normally don't give advice, but I will give advice in this one instance is if you don't have a drilling partner and you want to, I don't know, drill something like a triangle choke, don't do it on your girlfriend. They won't appreciate it.
And they always have the magical escape, which is grabbing you in the nuts.
Yeah. So, that is exactly it.
Yeah. And maybe
that's against the rules. What fucking rules?
Some people have grappling dummies. I've actually never used a grappling dummy, so I have no opinion about whether they're good or bad, but some people have grappling dummies.
Yeah.
Lockdown, COVID, all that stuff makes it hard. But if we ignore all that, try find someone who is got a similar schedule to you, similar interests.
And if you can't, that's a new one. Shadow drilling.
Right?
Gotta go.
Or even, like you can pull someone aside at the end of class and ask them if they got 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and you just quickly
did that
drill.
Consistently, it would add up over time.
Adds up, bro. Yeah.
100%. Cool. All right, that's a good place to leave it. I think that was a drilling extravaganza there. Learn everything you want to know about drilling. Sweet. So if you enjoyed this episode, feel free to follow us on Spotify and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We are on pretty much most streaming platforms for wherever you can get podcasts. So whatever
even recently
platform.
On your YouTube channel.
Yeah, we're now on YouTube as well. So if you're watching on YouTube, hello YouTube. And if you haven't seen the YouTube versions from about episode 18-ish onward, we have the video version up of, so you can see us talking.
Yeah, prior to that, it's just the audio.
Yeah,
but
just
still,
audio.
Still on YouTube.
Yep, still on YouTube. So, feel free to jump over onto YouTube, subscribe, follow us on Spotify, all that good stuff. And if you want to support the show further, we are on Patreon.
Do you think we should do, we might have to do one day. So by the time people are listening to this episode, 2 weeks prior to you listening to this, if you listen to this live when it comes out, more or less 2 weeks prior to that, we had a bit of a banter on our Instagram back and forth. Because, I mean, it seems pretty obvious, but for those who don't know, Kieren and I obviously both have access to the Beyond Jiu Jitsu Instagram page.
Yeah.
And we had a bit of banter between us that he looks like Andy Samberg and that I look like Sheldon from The Big Bang, which I do. And, you know, I threw myself under the bus because I gave him that. He didn't even come up with it. And we had a bit of a banter. Like,
I destroyed you on the meme game.
Yeah, I got roasted in the meme game. But we could do like because we film now like the video podcast, we could do like a deep fake one where you're Andy Samberg and I'm Sheldon and do the whole podcast.
I don't think I could do the accent. All right, guys. But if you enjoyed the podcast, feel free to support. And until next time.
Peace out.